Please welcome founder and managing partner of FutureMap and author of The Future is Asian, Parag Khanna, in conversation with Skift founder and CEO Rafat Ali.
Hey, Parag, how are you, brother?
So good to see you, my friend. Wish you were here again.
I know. We would have been going out and doing all kinds of things, obviously. But by the way, for those of you who joined last year, I'm sure you remember, Parag's daughter was the youngest speaker, I think, probably at a travel conference ever. She launched, Parag, tell quickly that app that... Yes, of course, yes.
The only travel chatbot for kids, and we're adding new features. It's becoming more of an ed tech product, you might say, at the moment, given that everyone is grounded. But you know, it's kids more than ever. I think you've noticed this probably with your little one. They're resilient. You know, if they're even though they're complaining about not seeing friends all the time and so forth, they're taking this more in stride. Then you know, we have to give them a lot of credit.
That's true. Well, I wanted you. Well, last year we had your daughter. We had to start with that. So this year we came to you, and so
always second or third place or choice.
Exactly, as it should be in families, as you know. Dad's always last. I've been a fan of yours. I've been reading your books. I've been reading your articles, obviously, for years now. We've become friends over the last few years as well, and you moved from US, actually from my part of the woods, to Singapore many years ago. You've been talking about how sort of Southeast Asia is the future of the world, is the present of the world, and the future of the world. So I wanted to get us a sense of the sort of geopolitical realities of Asia and how they intersect with travel. You obviously write a lot about that. You've been writing through this pandemic over the last 8 to 9, 10 months. And very timely, you wrote this article yesterday, or at least it posted yesterday online, which I think they're going to post the link in the chat as well, which said, has China peaked? Is that what was the headline?
Yeah, have we already reached peak China?
Has China peaked already? Obviously, what happens to China is of extreme interest to everybody in the world, so here in the US and different parts of Asia from a travel perspective as well. Australia, New Zealand, and obviously all other parts of Asia, all other parts of the world. Give a sense of sort of what you mean by, and obviously that was a contrarian view. So give a sense of what you mean by that.
Sure. Well, first of all, great to be with you again, and congrats for keeping the momentum and your huge audience, you know, alert and focused on the future. What you guys have done in terms of gathering the data to really point the way forward for the industry, I think is remarkable. So, and I know that when the vaccine comes, you'll beat me out to be the first to get it. So I guess I'll be the second.
I guess US maybe, who knows? But yes.
Will be wheels up eventually. So on China, look, we know how important it is geopolitically, macroeconomically, for the world economy, no question. And your own data has shown just how much the domestic travel industry in China, as well as other countries like Germany, where you have a large proportion of outbound travelers staying in the country, has led to that domestic resilience. Of course, China's outbound travelers have also been very significant. But what have we seen in the last few months? Fewer Chinese coming out, more Chinese staying home. Good for them, not so great for the rest of the region and the world that has come to depend to some degree on that category or that nationality of traveler. So where does it go from here? If you have onshore assets and properties, you know, in China, you know, those have probably been a source of resilience overall global revenue stream, and that's a good thing. More broadly, in terms of the trade picture, a lot of people before the pandemic criticized what was called Sino dependency, right? Oh no, your economy trades too much with China. You take too much investment from China, and yes, that can be a very worrying thing if it's a high amount of debt, you know, sovereign debt, commercial debt to China. However, now what we're seeing, and your previous presentation probably captured this a bit at the beginning, but macroeconomically, part of the reason you're seeing the Asian rebound is precisely because of Sino dependency, right? The only major trade agreement underway in the entire world right now is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership that's meant to further bring down barriers within Asian countries, largely centered around China. So part of the reason the forecasts of a significant economic contraction for other Asian countries have been somewhat mitigated is precisely because China is coming back up. So China's strongly there, but I'm saying when I say peak, it's because of the geopolitical counter reaction to China's unilateral sort of maneuvers, and that, as we know, plays out in the military domain, the commercial domain, the technological domain, and even to some degree when it comes to industries like yours in terms of how they have certain expectations around branding and nomenclature and things like this. And Taiwan is at the center of my essay. It's at the center of some of your conversations as well. So Taiwan, one of the things I argue in this piece is that you can think about a pandemic and conflict as two separate kinds of crises that disrupt the global order. But let's remember 100 years ago, they happened at the same time, right? World War I, Spanish flu. And right now, the hot button thing in geopolitics is China going to invade Taiwan over semiconductors, over just nationalism and, confrontations that have been kind of simmering for a long time now. And, I obviously worry about that because, I think that on the one hand, people are just repeating what they hear. On the other hand, you're physically seeing the maneuvering and China seeking to exploit weaknesses. So I worry about that because, again, it points to the fact that as much as having that Sino-dependency can be a good thing, a lot of things are good things until they become bad things, right? Countries need to diversify. And my argument in this series of essays and more broadly has been, we all need to be more connected to each other, not just to one, sort of golden goose. And that's why you see Australians saying, okay, well, if Indians are healthy, let's let them come. Let's not depend too much on Chinese. And so building more Silk Roads, more connections is the way to be resilient.
So, you and I talked, in fact, early March, and one of the articles I think they will put in the chat as well. And you said in the headline that I put there was why Asia is still the future of travel. It was obviously the pandemic was still in very early stages just in Asia. Singapore, I think, had early controlled it very well since then. The geopolitical tussles that are happening in different parts of Asia. Thailand this morning, I just saw the breaking news on what's happening in Thailand, obviously what's happening in Central Asia and in a few different hotspots, Kyrgyzstan and Armenia, Azerbaijan happening there, Turkey's role in it, India, China, Pakistan always is theirs. It never sort of stops. Do you see any of that affecting sort of domestic travel? I suppose because a lot of these countries are at tussle with each other. So the control of people from outside, from China to outside, or from different countries in Asia, probably has more of a bigger effect than it has in other parts of the world.
Yeah, so on the one hand, there's that resilience when you have a large domestic market, and if you have COVID under control, then again, people can circulate and help to cushion a little bit. But remember, you don't get to pick your crisis. In June is when a number of U.S. cities were planning on reopening hotels, shops, restaurants, and so forth, and then came the George Floyd protests. Thailand, was sort of decently had sort of COVID under control, and now you've got a huge political unrest. So you don't get to pick your crisis. These things are always reinforcing, unfolding and triggering each other in subtle ways that we can only reconstruct in retrospect why it happened, that one thing led to another. So for example, in Thailand, it's saying, hey, wait a minute, we're going to need to draw upon our fiscal resources to cope, to shore up the economy. But look, the royal crown, is sitting on tens of billions of dollars of assets. Without the pandemic, people might have just said, let it be, right? But now they're not going to let it be. So what does this mean in terms of domestic versus international? Well, it makes it hard to make long-term plans when you want to go somewhere, because you just never know what crisis is going to unfold, is going to be another wave. So, if you have a fully refundable kind of, plan, then that's good. So give you a personal example. We were booked on the E&O Railway, the luxury train from Bangkok down to Singapore. This is to complete Zara's book journey from Scotland.
You travel a lot with family. Yeah. Well, you travel a lot. Yourself personally and your family travel a lot together. We're itching, right? The kids' travel diaries for this year are sadly rather bare. And actually, she does have travel diaries. This is a true story.
Yeah. But so they gave us a full refund, right? And they said, okay, we don't know what the schedule is going to be for 2021. We'll give you your money back. Please book again. So that represents a sort of, risk-free option, if you will. But, the willingness of people to do transcontinental, interregional flights pre-vaccine is going to be relatively slim. What we are seeing here in Singapore is that those who have come in are coming in for the long haul. Right, because then a 2-week quarantine is not a major investment. You've got your Wi-Fi, you can work, and then they're just going to stay for a while. So this is, the connected urban version of these Fiji and Bermuda kinds of offers that are out there to, go and do remote work on an indefinite period. Or obviously long-term relocations, I think is going to be a major theme post pandemic as well, as people just want to be in places where either, you think of it as a green zone for health, or a connected hub where, as and when you can move, you can just get on a plane and sort of go. So I think we're going to see multiple trends unfolding in that regard.
Since you're based in Singapore, and we talked early on, and obviously Singapore controlled it, and then obviously they had a big spike, and it sort of exposed the underbelly, and I don't know if that's the right phrase, by the way. It exposed sort of a part of this of the society that was that was sort of never there, front of the house, if you will, and then it controlled it again. Are there lessons that the rest of Asian economies can learn from Singapore?
Well, overall, let's remember that Asian democracies, particularly Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, have done an exemplary job. So it shows that you don't have to be authoritarian to control a pandemic. You have to be transparent and competent. These are the two greatest virtues in governance. And so the fact that Asian democracies...
Why is there so less competency in political leaders in this world? Do you have a theory on that?
Oh my God! Well, that would take a few books to answer.
It just seems like the competency level of political leaders has just been exposed incredibly bare around the world in so many different ways.
It depends on the country, obviously, but the fact that, again, you've got poor authoritarian countries like Vietnam that have done well, and you have rich democracies like Japan that have done well. You have the SARS experience that's been critical, 18 years ago. People have an institutional memory of that. A lot of doctors and medical professionals who are actually politicians in Singapore, it's a pretty significant number. Obviously, a civil service. I mean, if I had to give you a 2-word answer on this, as you know, I've devoted my last 2 books to this question, but if I could sum them all up in 2 words, it would be civil service. The most boring possible answer is also the correct answer. It's having a public administration that's of the highest degree of education and competence and training, and public trust. Okay, 2 more words. Civil service and public trust. Those are the things. And you have that here in Asia. And yes, I do want the whole world to learn that, because a lot of people look at Asia and they just see a kind of Chinese-led monolithic kind of block. But as you and I know, being, Indian, the majority of the Asian population lives in democratic countries, right? Mm-hmm. And they're struggling democracies, but they're democracies nonetheless. And yes, there's a big lesson. So one of the things that's worth reflecting on, Rafat, is, the leapfrog coming out of this, right? These, pandemics and wars are discontinuous kinds of events. Right. So the question is not just comparing day to day who's done the worst, it's who's going to learn the most. And all of us should be attuned to that as travelers, even for a short-term visit, or as investors or people looking at long-term relocation. Who's going to learn the most coming out of this? Who's taken that body blow and said, we cannot let this continue and we cannot have this happen again?
Can you take a guess on countries in Asia that would have learned the best lessons?
I'd like to think the Philippines has the capacity to learn. They haven't done, let's say, an awful job by comparison, but there's a lot of, again, think about countries also where people are not necessarily afraid of their governments. Now, right now, people in the Philippines are afraid of their government, but historically, it's been a democracy where they are willing to get up, and oust their leaders, right? So I think that's an example. Indonesia, it's hard, a very, centralized system in terms of the geography of control, Jakarta and Java versus this huge sprawling kind of archipelago, but another country where there's very little patience for, sort of incompetence in terms of getting things done. And I think that's, again, an important lesson. Democracy in substance and style, is great, but people want to see results and outcomes. And again, I think a demanding public is critical. So in these countries that are so dependent on tourism and the hospitality industry. If you're not retraining workers, if you're not saying, here's what we're going to do with you for the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to prepare you to do this. There are many other things that need to be done. Let's keep up our facilities. Let's make sure that we have, prepare the health infrastructure. Let's get out the word in terms of branding, for our industry moving forward. If they don't have a plan, Rafat, they deserve to be thrown out. Throw them out tomorrow, right? Because what are they doing all day? And I bring this absolutely, bare knuckles attitude to this, because competence and delivery is critical at a time like this. People are suffering. Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit about our countries, or at least our origin countries, which is India. As Priyanka said in the previous slide, India has done the worst job, I think, in the planet in terms of how they've handled this. We instinctively, us Indians that are living outside India, knew that it was going to happen. It just took this long. But also on the travel side, Indian outbound was growing fast. I mean, not China, but it was growing fast. Indian aviation market is one of the fastest growing. Obviously, no airline has really cracked the market, but fast growing. Future of India in the region.
So tricky, and it really is ironic given how sort of the talent that's in the country, the expatriate talent. Let's not dwell on that for too long. That's the subject of many other books and discussions. But the data you cited, the outbound market was growing significantly. The global international, arrivals had been rising, international migration, all of those things, and then it stopped. And India was a key engine of this. And we don't know, obviously, how long it's going to take India itself to recover. India also did not join the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership in order to protect its software exports. But it is keen on looking east. You have a rising number of Indians that have relocated here to Southeast Asia for business and to the West. What the bright spot around India, this is just one of these areas where people cite such a huge disconnect between markets and ground reality, but record foreign investment into India, right? Into telecom, IT, Reliance, Geo.
Of course, Reliance took most of that money, by the way.
E-commerce, AI, you name it, right? If it's digital, the money is pouring in tens of billions of dollars, record inflows of capital. And again, and also these things are all connected. That momentum began pre-pandemic because of people saying we don't want to invest in China anymore. We're overexposed to China. India can be the next China. Let's remember that Jeff Bezos and
Zuckerberg as well. They all went to India.
Yeah, they were all doing their trips to India in the last 2-3 years, right? The supply chains were starting to shift already. So India is, as we were talking about the Philippines earlier, ripe for a major reinvention and overhaul coming out of this. I'm doing a lot of work in India right now with people who are trying to figure out what immediate reforms and long-term reforms are necessary to allow the tech sector to really thrive, and that includes biomedical, by the way, as well as digital and so forth. It's going to be an uphill slog. You and I know it's one step forward, one step sideways, one step back with India.
Yeah, we have, I think, a few minutes left. Let's talk about your favorite thing in the world, travel. You obviously love to travel. You are an author. You obviously speak a lot. Do you miss? Well, let's go with this. Business travel. When you and I talked in March, you were very bullish on business travel coming back. Has your view changed on that?
It's supply and demand, right? So, I'm willing to get on a plane and go. I don't live that far from Changi Airport, and we went there, by the way, just for fun a couple of weekends ago because the Jewel terminal has lots of fun things to do.
Incredible place. Yeah, that was what I was last.
You guys must have done a piece about the A380 restaurant, being sold out in like 10 minutes. We did not get a quote unquote table. But yeah, so supply and demand. Just last night, the last trip that I was going to still have done this year to Germany was scrapped and pushed to next year. So look, I personally think that there is an efficiency to this, right? For me, travel has always been about immersion and learning and research, not so much, going and wearing a suit and, giving a talk and then leaving again as if one wasn't really quote unquote there. So for me personally, I don't mind delivering, things in this mode, but I think learning is a little bit absent, when you don't have that deeper immersion. So I do hope that we think about, the future of business travel, not just as transactional, but, combining it, fusing it in some way with the experiential. And I know that, again, you guys have looked into this. What is the future of the experience in travel? What is going to make it worthwhile to go? My answer, totally selfish, totally self-serving, but you know what I'm about. It's obviously mixing business and pleasure, something I dare say I excel at. And I would like to see a lot more of that, because now when I go somewhere next year, I'm going to hope I can, even more than usual, bring the whole family along and actually spend a bit of time together and learn about new places.
Have you lost your fear a bit with family travel? Or are you still in the fear mode? I feel like everybody is going through various stages of this.
No, look, and I don't want to be called out for saying, the concerns are overblown. Like, look, in Singapore, there is zero COVID, right? One or two asymptomatic cases here and there, but still there's this incredible sense, of, let's follow the rules. And I think that is the right thing from an overall policy standpoint. But, I think we need to do more to facilitate moving between bubbles. If I know another place is a bubble like Singapore, like most of China, right? Chances are, get on a plane, fly to Chengdu, pretty much zero chance you're going to get COVID. Unless you hug a panda that has COVID, you're not going to get COVID. So I really do want to literally get on a plane right now with family and go to Chengdu. But, the restrictions are incredibly onerous. So that's a little bit off-putting, and of course, as you guys are reporting, the rules and regulations are changing every minute. So we are hearing Japan is open, but the fine print, the asterisk says, okay, only pre-approved business trips, only certain partners that have to facilitate it. And it becomes like this, forget about it. Like, let's just wait till things are normal again. So I'm dying to do it. But but even assuming these bubbles, we now have to get the logistics right. And I'm hoping for some real leapfrogs. Rafat, you guys and yourselves as leaders and conveners in the industry, I'm really hoping that we leapfrog in some way. Biometric tools, digitized health records, blockchain. Let's do it. Let's liberate the individual, from, in a way, the prison of nationality, and let's make bureaucracy super streamlined. And that's what's going to also, you really want to save the industry, not just incrementally, but with a real leapfrog. This is what we're going to need.
This is what we need to do. Somebody asked this question, and we're really out of time. Has India really done the worst job with COVID globally, or just in Asia? Well, I'm sitting in US, so I under no circumstance can I say I can point a finger at anybody. I happen to be Indian, and I'm living in the US. So the two countries that I'm associated with have done, unfortunately, the worst jobs in the world. Obviously, Brazil was part of that as well. So
I'll say it's all relative, right? And people are looking for relative gains at the end of the day. So right now, one probably is an inbound to India. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you again, Parag. We could continue obviously talking, and hopefully I'll see you next year. Or if you're going to come here to New York, we're going to go out to our favorite Indian restaurant.
Do it.
All right. Thanks again, Parag.
Thanks so much, Rami. Great to see you.
Thanks.